This is the well-known story The Last Leaf by O. Henry. The Last Leaf. To Greenwich Village, many people came who were interested in art. They liked the bohemian life of the village and they enjoyed living among so many artists. The buildings and apartments were often very old and dirty, but this only added to the interest of the place. At the top of an old three-story brick house, Sue and Joanna had their studio. Johnsy was a familiar name for Joanna. One of them was from the state of Maine, the other from California. They had met in the restaurant of an 8th Street hotel. Both were artists who had recently come to New York to make their living. That was in May. In November, a cold, unseen stranger, whom the doctors called pneumonia, stalked about the city, touching one here and one there with his icy finger. He touched Johnsy, and she lay, scarcely moving, on her painted iron bed, looking through the small window at the blank wall of the opposite building. One morning, the busy doctor invited Sue into the hall. She has one chance in, let us say, 10, he said as he shook down the mercury in his clinical thermometer. And that chance is for her to want to live. But your little lady has made up her mind that she is not going to get well. Has she anything on her mind? She wanted to paint the Bay of Naples some day, said Sue. No, something more important. A man, for instance? No. Well, it is the weakness then, said the doctor. But whenever my patients begin to count their last few moments, I subtract 50% from the curative power of medicines. If you can succeed in making her interested in something, in asking, for instance, about the latest styles in women's clothes, then I will promise you a 1 in 5 chance for her instead of 1 in 10. After the doctor had gone, Sue went into her own room and cried. Later, trying not to show her sadness, she went into Johnsy's room, whistling. Johnsy lay under the bedclothes with her face towards the window. Sue stopped whistling, thinking Johnsy was asleep. But soon Sue heard a low sound, several times repeated. She went quickly to the bedside. Johnsy's eyes were open wide. She was looking out of the window and counting backwards. 12, she said, and a little later, 11, and then 10, and 9, and then 8 and 7, almost together. Sue looked out of the window. What was there to count? There was only a grey backyard and the blank wall of the opposite house. An old ivy vine, dead at the roots, climbed halfway up the hall. The cold breath of autumn had blown almost all the leaves from the vine until its branches were almost bare. What is it, dear? Asked Sue. 6, said Johnsy very quietly. They're falling faster now. 3 days ago, there were almost 100. It makes my head ache to count them. But now it's easy. There goes another one. There are only 5 left now. 5 what, dear? Tell me, said Sue. Leaves on the ivy vine. When the last one falls, I must go too. I've known that for 3 days. Didn't the doctor tell you? The doctor didn't say any such thing. That is pure foolishness, said Sue. What have old ivy leaves to do with your getting well? And you used to love that old wine so much. Please don't be silly. The doctor told me this morning that your chances of getting well soon were excellent. Now try to take some soup and let me get back to work so that I can make money to buy you some good port wine. You needn't get any more wine, said Johnsy, keeping her eyes fixed out of the window. There goes another. That leaves just 4. I want to see the last one fall before it gets dark. Then I'll go too. Johnsy, dear, said Sue, bending over her, will you promise me to keep your eyes closed and not look out of the window until I have finished working? I must deliver these drawings tomorrow. I need the light. Otherwise, I would pull down the curtain. Couldn't you draw in the other room? Asked Johnsy coldly. I'd rather stay here with you, said Sue. Besides, I don't want you to keep looking at those silly ivy leaves. Tell me as soon as you've finished, said Johnsy, closing her eyes and lying white and still, because I want to see the last leaf fall. I'm tired of waiting. I'm tired of thinking. Try to sleep, said Sue a little later. I must go downstairs for a minute to get Mr. Berman, who's going to sit as my model. But I will be right back. And don't move. And also, please promise me not to look out of the window. Old Mr. Berman was a painter who lived on the first floor beneath them. He was past 60. Berman was a failure in art. He had always wanted to paint a masterpiece, but he had never yet begun to paint it. For many years, he had painted nothing except now and then something in the line of commercial or advertising work. He earned a little money by serving as a model for those young artists who could not pay the price for a regular model. But he always talked about the great masterpiece he was going to paint. For the rest, he was a fierce little old man who regarded himself as a watchdog and protector for the 2 young artists living above him, of whom he was very fond. Sue found Berman in his poorly lit studio. In one corner of the room stood a blank canvas which had been waiting for 25 years to receive the first line of the promised masterpiece. She told him of Johnsy's fancy and how she feared she would indeed, light and fragile as a leaf herself, float away when her slight hold upon the world grew weaker. Old Berman shouted, "Are there people in the world who are foolish enough to die simply because leaves fall from an old vine? I've never heard of such a thing. Why do you permit such silly ideas to come into her mind? Oh, that poor little Miss Johnsy." "She's very ill and very weak," explained Sue, "and the fever has left her mind full of strange ideas." Johnsy was sleeping when they both went upstairs. Sue pulled down the curtain and motioned Berman into the other room. There they looked out the window fearfully at the wine. Then they looked at each other for a moment without speaking. A cold rain was falling, mixed with snow. Berman took a seat and prepared himself to pose for Sue as a model. When Sue woke up the next morning, she found Johnsy with dull, wide-open eyes looking at the window. "Pull up the curtain. I want to see," Chauncey said quietly. Sue obeyed. But, oh, after the heavy rain and the strong wind, one leaf was still hanging on the vine. The last leaf. Still dark green, it hung bravely from a branch some 20 feet above the ground. "It is the last one," said Chauncey. "I thought it would surely fall during the night. I heard the wind and the rain. It will fall today, and I shall die at the same time." "Dear Chauncey," said Sue, placing her face close to Chauncey's on the pillow, "think of me if you won't think of yourself. What shall I do?" The day wore away, and even through the twilight they could see the lone ivy leaf clinging to its stem against the wall. And then, with the coming of the night, the north wind was again loosed, and the rain began to fall heavily. When it was light enough, Chauncey the merciless commanded that the curtain be raised. The ivy leaf was still there. Chauncey lay for a long time looking at it, and then she called to Sue. "I've been a bad girl, Sue," said Chauncey. "Something has made the last leaf stay there just to show me how bad I was. It is a sin to want to die. You may bring me a little soup now, and then put some pillows behind me, and I will sit up and watch you cook." An hour later she said, "Sue, some day I hope to paint the Bay of Naples." The doctor came in the afternoon. "Even chances," said the doctor, taking Sue's thin, shaking hand in his. "With good nursing, you'll win. And now I must see another case I have downstairs. Berman, his name is. Some kind of an artist, I believe. Pneumonia, too. He's an old, weak man, and the attack is acute. There is no hope for him, but he goes to the hospital today to be made more comfortable." The next day, the doctor said to Sue, "She's out of danger. You won. Nutrition and care now. That's all." And that afternoon, Sue came to the bed where Chauncey lay contentedly and put one arm around her, pillows and all. "I have something to tell you," she said. "Mr. Berman died of pneumonia today in the hospital. He was ill only for 2 days. They found him the morning of the first day in his room downstairs, helpless with pain. His shoes and clothing were wet through an icy cold. They couldn't imagine where he had been on such a dreadful night. And then they found a lantern still lighted, and a ladder that had been dragged from its place, and some scattered brushes, and a palette with green and yellow colors mixed on it. And look out the window, dear, at the last ivy leaf on the wall. Didn't you wonder how it never fluttered or moved when the wind blew? Ah, darling, it's Berman's masterpiece. He painted it there the night that the last leaf fell."